For preppers, ham radio may or may not be as useful in an actual large disaster, a truly SHTF situation. Ham radio may or may not be what you think it is. I found this article on Reddit and I wanted to read it to you because it has some good points and I want to know what you think about it. Thanks for joining the channel today. Like I said, I found this article on Reddit in the amateur radio subreddit. And of course, the title caught my eye. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Okay, let's not judge a book by its cover like so many people do on lots of my videos. And that's okay. It's all right. It's not a dig. Let's not judge a book by its cover, but let's actually read through this article and see what this guy's talking about. Now, in short, I think this guy makes some good points. I don't remember if he signs his call sign at the bottom of it or not. He talks like he is a ham radio operator. I think he makes some good points, but I think he also leaves some stuff out. But his whole synopsis of the article is he's talking to preppers that think that this detrimental world takeover thing, either by government takeover or by zombie apocalypse or by something like global dominating, like an extinction level event, as they would call it. And the likelihood of something like that happening, while perhaps we get a little bit closer to it every day, but at least in the United States, I don't know. Put your opinions below. Let me know what you think about that. The likelihood of that happening is not as likely as some other situations. So I'm going to read through this, and I'd like to know what you guys think about this. First, he gives ham radio a good pat on the back. I like ham radio just like the 700,000 plus operators in the U.S. do. It's a great hobby with so many tools and techniques to choose from. There's something for everyone. Everyone also includes prepper types, and here arises an issue I have. Ham radio isn't very useful in terrible SHTF scenarios that most preppers dream about. Now, I will say this. I've gotten some comments on videos in the past where I talk about ham radio and prepping, and they're like, why do I need to know all this information for just to be able to talk to my family during emergencies? Why do I need to study a test? Why do I need to know about electronics? Well, and the answer is this. The answer is because that's not what ham radio is made for. It's useful in those situations, and we're going to read about what this guy has to say, but in some situations, it's very useful, but at the same time, it wasn't actually made for preppers. I'm going to talk more about that in another video, so let's move on here. As read and heard across the interwebs and subreddits and comment forums, there are many discussions about the importance of communications in SHTF scenarios. Of course, communications will be important, but somehow communications has become synonymous with ham radio, especially in the 2-meter, 70-centimeter handheld ham radio. Okay, so yeah, handheld is going to be short range, and it's going to be low power, and it's going to be useful in some situations, but not all. Those types of radios, along with licensed operated procedures, just are not going to be very useful in types of terrible, awful SHTF scenarios most preppers are alluding to. Yeah, so if you're talking about doomsday stuff, I still think it's better to have a radio than not. So it's not going to hurt you to have a 2-meter 440 dual band handheld with you. Even if you can't reach anybody on it, even if you can't hear anybody on it, it's not going to hurt anything. So I think it's still an important part of your pack. Let's move on. These prepper types imagine awful natural disasters like an 8.0 earthquake going off for 10 minutes and laying waste to their town, but somehow their own home and antenna tower will be spared, ? They imagine the government, disintegration or collapse, and impending civil wars, and somehow talking on a repeater is going to save their family, ? They imagine a nuclear bomb going off, and somehow they will survive fallout because they can talk to a random person in Germany on their HF rig. All of those scenarios are probably what some people think, but not realistic. Yeah, and so I'm agreeing with the author right there when I say that. Preppers should not fixate on imagining terrible SHTF scenarios and how ham radio will be essential for survival. Just enjoy the hobby like the rest of us. Okay, now this is good here. Imagine this scenario. War is breaking out across your city. Buildings are being bombed. Electric grid goes down. You have no cell phones. Typical SHTF. Here's a good picture. In fact, I think I'm going to use that for my thumbnail. Now imagine turning on your VHF radio and you hear, yeah, this is Victor Foxtrot 5 November Zulu Mike checking into the net. What kind of net is going to be going on when world chaos is happening? I know some of you guys who run daily nets on HF think that you're still going to be running a daily net if everything around you is burning down. Let's be realistic here, okay? I found this part of it to be quite funny. How's the bombing over there? Because over here it's getting real bad. Back to you, net control. Thanks for checking in. Did I get your call sign correct, Mike? Yeah, because this is important during times of civil unrest to make sure you're running a net and you get your call sign correct. Nope. Victor Foxtrot 5, November Zulu Mike. The name is Eduardo Cumberbund. Okay, then. Great to have you. Yeah, bombing is real bad over here. My 80-meter homebrew spiderweb is still up in the backyard, so I can hear random people in Europe talking. Are you related to Benedict by chance? This is a ludicrous example of a conversation that would never happen if civil unrest or war was going on around you, okay? It's funny. I'm laughing at this. He's making a mockery of nets right now, and I don't blame him, okay? Because, I mean, seriously, ham radio ain't gonna help in this situation. No, not like that it's not. Not like that it's not. My goodness. Ham radio is absolutely important at the local level in a reasonably anticipated local emergency situations. Wait, doesn't that opinion contradict my previous thoughts? No, because I would not equate reasonably anticipated emergency with the SHTF scenarios preppers talk about all day. Good point. Okay, he's talking about these preppers that literally doomsday preppers, where the government's going to take over and come knocking on your door and take all your guns, take all your food, and say you have to rely on us now or something like that. He's talking about really bad earthquakes, really bad hurricanes. What you have to remember is that ham radio is very useful post these events. Now, I'm not talking about post-government takeover or civil war, but like post-Hurricane Sandy and Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Ike down here in Texas, and a couple others that I could name. After those, and even after 9/11 in New York, okay, afterwards, communications are down for usually a short period of time, which when I say short period, a couple days, a week. Heck, in Puerto Rico, when that hurricane hit Puerto Rico a couple years ago, they were without power in some parts of the island for like 8 or 9 months. In those situations, you don't need an antenna tower in your backyard. Parks on the Air is a fantastic example of how you can take a roll-up antenna, go out to the field somewhere, set up with your 100-watt rig and a battery. Hopefully you have all this stuff in a pack somewhere. Okay, if you're really prepping, you need a battery, a full-powered HF radio, a VHF, UHF mobile radio with 50 watts, and a couple of roll-up antennas that you can put in a pack and store somewhere, hopefully in an EMP-proof box or bag or something. And you can take these out and set them up in the field and communicate. Okay, so you don't need your repeater, you don't need your ham radio tower to do all that. Parks on the Air has provided a fantastic example of field communication comms talking around the country, around the world. So you don't really need all that. But after 9/11, after Katrina, after all these hurricanes, ham radio operators went into the area, set up communications, and sent messages into and out of the area because electricity was down, cell phone towers were down, and the few cell phone towers that were remaining were oversaturated. I don't know if you know this or not, but cell phone networks, AT&T, Verizon, Mint Mobile, and all these guys, they are not set up for all of their subscribers to pick up their phone at the same time and dial a number and talk all at the same time. It would oversaturate the network. You're driving down the road and you get call drops still. It's 2023 for crying out loud. And you get bad connections and call drops on phones all the time. Now think about a situation where everyone picks up their phone and dials a number at the same time. It's going to oversaturate the network. That's what happened after 9/11 in New York. That's what happened after Katrina in New Orleans and several other places. So ham radio operators were able to set up in the area and send communications back and forth in and out of the area to monitor traffic, provide information both to and into and out of the area for communications that didn't exist elsewhere. Down here at the next session, it says a few examples of how ham radio can help. Coastal areas that anticipate seasonal hurricanes, yes, like I just one example. Semi-arid forest areas that anticipate wildfire, good. Rural or backcountry races for supporting runners and competing at the risk of injury. Marathons, foot races, bicycle races, this is something that ham radio clubs already do across the country to help support and just kind of monitor everybody, make sure nobody gets lost in the woods or something, or gets injured out away from the big pack and nobody can find them. In remote areas of safety, of adventures, risk of injury. Yes, many more examples. Enjoy the hobby, but don't let the preppers excess over the SHTF and get all of the fun hams out there caught up in the end of the world 73. Okay, so, and he doesn't sign his call sign here, which is totally fine. But he has some good points, I think. I think he makes some really good points. I think he makes some really good arguments. And before we go any further, I do want to mention the fact that if you want to get your ham radio license or upgrade to general or extra so that you can use HF, the great thing about ham radio is it prepares you for these situations. If you just go buy a ham radio and put it in the drawer and say, okay, I've got it if I need it, if an emergency happens, but then you pick it up one day, your battery's dead, you don't know how to program it, you don't know what frequencies to go to, you don't know, if I tell you to pick up your radio and set a frequency of 147.100 megahertz with a negative offset of 600 kilohertz and a CTCSS tone of 110.9, are you going to know how to do that? So the best way is to learn before you need to learn, before you need it. And one of the best ways to do that is by going to hamradioprep.com. You can download their app on your smartphone for free, iOS and Android. Download their app for free. Get started today. Technician, first class, general, second class, extra, third class. All three. You can buy a package for all three. You can save a 20% discount off of everything they have with the coupon code of Jason20. They even have a Baofeng Basics class if you just want to know everything about how to use your brand new Baofeng UV5R radio and you just got into ham radio. Hamradioprep.com. Thank you for supporting the channel. I got to read a couple of these comments too. These comments are actually pretty positive. You know, he's not getting a lot of hate. He's not getting a lot. He got a couple of people in here that disagreed with him. But the best one I've read so far is right here. This is great. Redacted since birth. A lot of these so-called preppers watch too much television that inaccurately depicts the capabilities of radio. Now, that statement is true. That's a very true statement like that, because I don't think radio gets depicted accurately in television and movies these days. But this next part, this is what got me to laughing. The best use of a radio in an emergency situation I've seen on TV was an episode of the new MacGyver show. A woman was trapped in a collapsed building and was trying to use a Baofeng to summon help. The rescuers couldn't hear her very well, and the radio's battery eventually went dead. She was finally able to summon assistance by banging the radio on the pipe she was trapped under. Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah, that's for a Baofeng. Sorry, Baofeng guys, but that's going to be accurate. Also, 70 centimeters is going to work better than 2 meters as far as penetrating through walls. If you're trapped underneath the building in a basement, the higher frequencies, 440 megahertz, 900 megahertz, 1.2 gigahertz, are going to penetrate through walls and through buildings and out of the rubble better than, say, a 2 meter radio, 144 megahertz radio, 150 megahertz MERS radio. The 440 megahertz ham band and the 460 megahertz GMRS band are going to be more capable of that. So this is one of the things you learn in ham radio. It's one of the things you learn by just, not only by getting your license and testing, but just by going out and using it. I was driving through a tunnel one time and I had a 900 megahertz radio in my car along with my other radios. And I was listening to two different repeaters. And once I went through the tunnel, all of the repeaters disappeared except for the 900 megahertz one, because that frequency is able to penetrate through concrete and rock and out of buildings better than the lower frequencies are. So what do you think about SHTF situations? Okay, so in a nutshell, this guy's correct. I agree with what he's saying. Because he is proposing these ultimate doomsday prepper situations that get talked about a lot. You know, the government coming and kicking down your door and taking away all your stuff. Bad natural disasters, civil unrest, civil war, invasion of some sort. And these situations are not impossible. They're not impossible, okay, especially in today's current U.S. climate. Go vote in 2024. That's all I'm going to say. It's not impossible for this stuff to happen, but the likelihood of it happening is less than the next natural disaster, like a hurricane or an earthquake or bad storm. Tornadoes. I live at the very bottom southern end of Tornado Alley here in Texas. So tornadoes happen during tornado season all the time. So in those situations, ham radio is going to be a lot more useful. Again, I still think it's more useful. I still think you're going to be better off having a radio than not, okay? Because it's not going to hurt you to have a radio, even if you just get one of these receive-only radios, okay, that receives shortwave and single sideband and AM and FM. You can buy these radios on Amazon for $50 to $100 or more dollars. If you have something you can monitor traffic with, monitor your local comms with, it's still going to be better. Even if you can't talk on it, it's still going to be better than just being clueless and in the dark about things that are going on around you. So some sort of radio is always going to be better than no radio at all. And even if you can't hear anything, at least you've got it and you know what traffic is or isn't out there. I'd like to know what you think about this whole situation. Put a comment below.